Let's start with this question. Have you ever met anyone that you didn't like? Ms. Pope, what did you do? Try to ignore them. Mr. Morris, you were raising your hand too? No?
Didn't give them time of day.
Didn't give them the time of day, okay. Ms. Spottinger?
Same thing. Ignoring.
Limited my conversation.
Limited your conversation?
Walked away.
Walked away? Anyone else?
Can I turn my usual self off?
Turn, okay, became somebody else because you didn't want to converse with them. Second question. Did you ever buy anything from someone you didn't like?
No. Yeah. Unless I absolutely.
Okay, got, yes. Ms. Greasy? What? You ever purchased anything from someone you didn't like?
Yes.
Why?
Because I needed food.
Because you needed food, okay? Got through it, okay?
I bought a camera from a guy at Best Buy. I didn't know it.
And you still bought it?
I did, I needed it, I was going to Spain, so.
Right then, so it was urgency, and this was food. Okay, I got those.
I bought a cell phone as well.
You did?
Yes.
The only supplier?
No, it's actually the company I was with for a long time. I needed a new phone. I went in. It was unfriendly and professional, but I needed a phone, so I still.
That was the only place you could buy a phone?
Well, at the time, I needed it, so it was an urgency, I suppose.
It was urgency, okay. Mr. Pruitt? You can say no. I can't remember the last time, unless it was a sole source. Unless it was the only person, or unless it was price. If it's price, I'll gut it through. But more often than not, we don't buy things from people we don't like, right? Well, you're in sales, or you're moving people, or you're in a supervisory position, and you've got someone working for you you don't like. What do? Hey, I'm in charge. By gosh, you're going to do what I tell you to do, right? How well does that work? As long as you're there, the person tends to do what you want them to do. When you're not there, what happens? When the cat's away, the mice will play, of course. So how then, what do you do when you're in a position that you have to influence someone you don't like?
Fake it.
Mm-mm.
Without them
You
knowing
can't
you're
fake it.
faking it.
I'll show you how to do it. Okay? Pull out your profiles. Now we're going to talk about behavior. And I want you to turn to your right page. It's page 8.
I don't know anything about that.
8 or 9. This particular model in psychology came from William Marston. Marston wrote a book in 1923 called The Emotions of Normal People. Did you hear that? Normal people. If you had any psychology, you know that the 20s and previous decades were the decades where we focused on abnormal psychology. Freud, Carl Jung. Marston comes out with this book in 1923 about the rest of us. As a result, there are more than 100 adaptations of this 4-quadrant model on the internet. They're all over the place, and this may not be the first time you've been exposed to it. But this is the source. We're going back to Marston, to his original work, to help you understand how you behave, and then how to begin to compare you to others. Because frankly, almost always, when people upset you, they're not doing it on purpose. They're just being themselves. And yet, from their actions on their own, they piss you off. So Marston said, if you can understand the behavior of yourself and others, If this circle represents all of behavior, you can divide behavior into two hemispheres in which people are divided into a task orientation and a relationship orientation. Next, he said how actively you engage versus how passively you engage can begin to identify the dominant behaviors that we see in people. If you are task-oriented and you actively engage in the process of solving tasks, getting things done, he called this the D factor, and it stands for dominance, or more recently, decisiveness. It's the intensity with which people desire to solve tasks and solve problems. The D factor. Second, if we're still solving problems and engaging in tasks, but we do it passively, he called this compliance. If we actively, on the other hand, engage in relationships, in building relationships, and we actively do it, he called this I, or influencing. And if you passively engage in building relationships, he called this steadiness. We retain these four letters. And on the graph, bottom right, you're going to see two graphs with the letters D-I-S-C, or DISC, at the top. Mr. Palmer, question? Cool. Okay. I use these letters, you'll hear me over and over and over in this semester, to the extent that you begin to relate to when I say your D is high, your C is low, your I is high, your I is low. It's never a criticism. It's simply an indication that because I've been working with this guy for almost 25 years, as I watch people, I see behavioral characteristics. My wife and I have multiple conversations all the time as we talk about other people in this way. It helps us understand why someone is doing what they're doing. Questions thus far? I need your questions on this. Whenever you have one, make sure you pop it out. Let's talk about the D factor. The D factor stands for dominance or decisiveness. There's an energy line or a midline right at the 50 percentile. If you score above the line, the higher you score, the more when you engage in this factor, it brings you energy. The lower it goes, the more when you engage in problem solving, it pulls energy away. Can someone with a low D solve problems? Of course. They tend to do it slower and in different ways than people who like to solve problems. If you score up here, what that means is that when someone tells you something, Mr. Morris, when someone tells you something, you think they want you to solve a problem for them. You see everything like a guy that's got a hammer looking for nails. Right? Bangs a screw, bangs a head. He's banging things all the time. Sometimes people with high Ds try to solve problems that don't exist. Can they be a pain in the Yeah. Now, how about if your D is low? Is that bad? High D's, I think it is. I think everyone should be like them. And if you're not, somehow you're a lesser human being. Is it true? No.
Can you explain the natural versus adapted style?
We will. This is natural style. Thank you very much. Natural style is the one I want you looking at now. It's you with your friends, with your family. Adapted style is how you adapt to meet the needs of your environment. For most of you, it could be college. Chances are, if you're working, it's work. Because that's the environment that places a lot of stress on you.
I have a question about the D.
Yeah.
So you said if you score high on D, those are the people that have a lot of energy and they,
Not energy
okay,
necessarily.
well, they spend a lot of energy on solving problems.
Intensity, exactly.
So is that means that if they're high D, they tend to try to solve problems when there's like every problem around them.
Mhm.
Sometimes where there's no problem, we try to solve it.
Exactly. They invent a problem.
Okay,
You got a problem?
yeah.
I'm just being facetious. You got a problem? My D's pretty high. The emotion connected to decisiveness is anger. Low D's feel it. If I said to you, why isn't your report finished? Am I mad? Sounds like it, doesn't it? Yeah, see, you might interpret it as anger. It's not anger, it's intensity. D's overuse impatience. So when you, got it, Mr. Palmer, when you feel it, now you don't have to act that way. You don't have to act, or low D's, when they get mad, they take it inside. They burn. High D's just let it out. And they ask for forgiveness, not for permission. Questions on the D? Let's take the I factor. The I factor stands for influencing, and whereas the D factor is the problem factor, the I factor is the people factor. It's the intensity with which you like to engage with others. If you're low in the I, it means you'd rather be by yourself. If you're low in the I, it means that you don't trust verbiage. When someone tells you something, you don't trust it. Who has a low I here?
Mine's 30.
30?
22.
22? True? Fine. What you do persuades me, not the blah, 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 blah. But as you high eyes do the blah, 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 they'll look at you like this. Don't give you any feedback. Low eyes do not give feedback. So, how do you tend to act, high eyes, when you don't get feedback? Start with smirk.
I just keep talking.
Yeah, keep talking, keep talking, keep talking, keep talking. Is that what you want her to do? No. So what is something that I know I'm good at, yet when I engage with someone with a low I, I've got to be quiet. I've got to get them talking hard. How do I do it? Well, that's a part of this course. How do you get people to talk to you who don't want to talk to you? Now, if your I is above 95, how many? Not above 95? Okay, when you get above 95, you don't know when to shut up. Above 90, it's kind of that way. And if that happens, you need to get feedback. Because in sales, that is the kiss of death. And if you're trying to persuade Mr. Hasanovich of something, and you wax on and on and on. Does that persuade you?
No, if they're talking too much, I'm usually just pretend I'm listening, but I'm thinking about something else.
Now, high eyes, who are you naturally attracted to in terms of dating? Other high eyes?
We want that feedback.
But that'd be a lot of talking though.
What?
That would just be a lot of talking if it's.
Yeah, you just wouldn't get one a word in edgewise. Like, shut up, I want to talk. No, you shut up, I want to talk.
So would it be low, high, low, high?
Yeah. Low eyes and high eyes are naturally attracted to each other. The guy will say, wow, she listens to me. And she might think, oh my God, you're boring as hell. I'm listening. There's nothing, I can't. If the S, now we're going to talk about S here in a minute. But the high eyes overuse talkativeness as a mechanism for persuasion.
You said that they don't provide feedback, but aren't they always providing feedback? Because it may not be positive feedback, but they're still like, you can still read them and say that.
Body language?
Yeah, you can say, they may not be smiling and yeah, I wanna buy that, but if they're sitting there stale faced, it's okay, they're not interested, like, you know.
Oh,
It's
bad
feedback.
assumption. If you're not giving any feedback, does it mean you don't want to buy?
Not really.
See? You can't make that assumption. If you're not getting feedback, the problem is you. Like, what do I have to do now to get feedback from the other person? More often than not, it's about asking better questions. And we'll talk a lot about that. Mr. Palmer.
Is it possible for two high eyes to get together and then one of them kind of lowers it to kind of make up for the other high eye?
If the D is high and the I is high versus the high I and the lower D, then the one with the higher D is going to be more intense. Okay? Let's call it.
Do D and I often go together?
They can, but not regularly. I see them. The higher the D and the lower the I is a characteristic we call goodwill. When the D comes down against the I, the more it comes down, the more the person smiles. When the D goes up, the smiles disappear. And when the D goes above the I, serious. S. S stands for steadiness. This is the pace factor. Problem, people, pace. If you're high in the S, it means you prefer a slow, steady, methodical pace. If you're high in the S, you tend to be a good listener. You tend not to show your emotions. The emotion tied to steadiness is no emotion. And if you're up here and the I is below it, if the I and the S are together, it's a good talker, good listener. Good talker, good listener. Look, I and S. See this? When they're both strong, it means this line gets pushed up because your focus is on building strong relationships. When the S, so when you're above the energy line, you like to focus on projects one at a time. High in the S. Focus. Do it, do it, do it, do it, do it, done. Do it, do it, do it, do it, do it, done. Okay, I got 2 things done. Now 3. That's the preference. That brings you energy. I got it done. Fabulous. Now I'm going to start on the next assignment. Low S's, this is pace, remember, this is slow pace, quickening pace. People that are low S's, if they have to do things one at a time, Mr. Morris, how much energy does that bring you? Doesn't. Well, I should do multiple things. This, and I got this going, I got this going, I got this going, got all these things going at the same time. This is the preference. Multitasking is the disease of low S's. Because they like doing lots of things at the same time. Questions on the S factor? Now look, this is the one, the first two are active. It's easy to see the D if now you know what you're looking for. It's pretty easy to see the I because the emotion tied to influencing is emotion. The more emotion you see in the person, the higher the I. The more intensity attached, the higher the D. And you can only exhibit the characteristics of one of these factors at a time. You can't be both D and I at the same time. This produces, for people who have a D and I that are equivalent, the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde comes in, says, hello, good morning, how are you? Then, am I mixing these up? Mr. Hyde is the evil one, right? Dr. Jekyll's the good one. Okay. Mr. Hyde comes in and says, yeah, but you were late. I thought he was going to be a nice guy today. All I'm saying is I was late. Why were you late? Am I mad? Kind of feels like it, doesn't it? I just want to know why you're late. Because one should be on time. Now, if you let that piss you off with a D, shame on you. Because that D is just being herself. Questions? He's beginning to click in now. Click, 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 click. And tonight, if you're going out to enjoy an adult beverage, as I will be, I have a date time. You're going out for an adult beverage, and you just watch people. This will come completely, it'll make all the sense in the world. Oh, yeah, oh, look at that. And especially if you're in the hunt. You need to know what you're looking for, okay? Oh, there's that one. Now let's talk about the last factor, the C factor. C factor stands for compliance. When you're high in the C, this is the procedures factor. When you're high in the C, it means you want to comply to procedures set by others. If you're low in the C, you want to comply to procedures set by you. Which is right?
Neither.
No, neither. Not right. But it's you. You then, even looking at this disc graph in this room, there are no two people who are identical. Maybe close. Then when you bring in motivation and you add that goes like this on behavior, what emerges is a unique human being. Every person on the earth has a different complex of behaviors and motivations. Why? Because they have unique experiences. You grew up in Bosnia. You grew up in Tampa, Florida. You grew up in Shelbyville. And people are different in different places. And when you were 3 years old, you know, you got hit by a car door. And when you were 4 years old, you got knocked out. And when you were 5 years old, we have all these unique experiences that forms how we're motivated and how we behave. Now, behavior is set for most people by the age of 6. Do some people change? Yes, very painfully. I had a young lady tell me I was not like this when I was in junior high. I was quiet and meek, and I decided I didn't want to be that the rest of my life. And 8th grade was the worst year of my life. because people didn't know how to treat her, she was acting differently, and so she consciously changed her behavior. Yes, you can do it. In most situations, it's not required, it's not necessary. What is necessary is for you to take responsibility for your behavior. Now let's take an example. People with a dominant S. How many above 90 on S's? Raise your hands.
Pretty close.
88? Okay, Mr. Warren,
92.
92? Okay. Let's use Mr. Warren as an example here. S's, high S's, tend not to like conflict. They like to get along. So Mr. Warren, what you didn't know this morning was he has a, I'm going to make this up. He has a roommate, and his roommate, ID. So his roommate last night asked Mr. Warren to borrow his car. Mr. Warren's a nice guy. He wants to help people. He knows that his roommate needed to go out. He got some, what time you're gonna come home, you're not gonna wreck it, you're gonna put gas in it, got all this, those things done, yep. Okay, you can borrow it. He walks out this morning, car door's open. There's no bing, 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 because the battery's dead. How does Mr. Warren respond to that? If his D were high, like Mr. Morris, D is high, he'd say, he'd get mad right away, right? He'd just get it out. And the swear words come out. And he'd wake his roommate up and I'm never going to get my car again. That's not how you do it. What he would say is, oh, no, I might be late. Okay, now what am I going to do? Okay, I've got my AAA card. I'll call AAA. I'll do this. What happens is, he doesn't get mad. He takes that anger and he puts it in his gunny sack. Does this. So, AAA comes, gets in the car, goes to school, gets across, he gets over by the registry, and the train's going across. Just as he comes, I'm more late. Doesn't get mad, puts it in the gunny sack. Goes to find a parking space, none there. Has to turn around, go back across the railroad tracks, park over on that side. But he sees his friend, good morning, how are you? Then he comes to class, and the seat that he usually sits in, someone else is sitting in. S's tend to be possessive, even of things they don't own. Like if I sat here 2 sessions in a row, well, this is my seat. And a D who doesn't give a just sits down and says, I'm going to sit here today. So Mr. Warren will come up and say, I'll sit over here. Doesn't want to have no conflict, but he keeps gunny sacking and gunny sacking and gunny sacking. And then a little thing happens. His mom calls. He says, now you're coming home this weekend. No, I can't come home. I've just had a terrible week, and this happened, and that happened, and that happened, and... Right? Now, after your gunny sack is empty, how do you feel?
Good.
Oh, great. Right. This is how S's deal with conflict. Now, you can do that if you want to continue to, or you can say, I never realized that I did that. But is that a productive way of dealing with conflict?
No.
No. So what do? You have to have, so now, when you have a limitation to your style, as it relates to you getting something accomplished, you have to use a different habit. You have to create a habit, and then a trigger for the habit to remind you to do it. So one thing you can do to manage conflict is you can use this phrase. You can say to the D who's sitting here, hi, my name is, I don't know your first name, Mr. Warren?
John.
My name is John Warren. I'm confused. Take responsibility. I'm confused. For the last 2 sessions, I sat here because I wanted to be here right in front of Derry, whatever the reason is. Would you mind if I sat here again? No, no problem. And second, if you can deliver a benefit, okay? You might say, you know, if you sit here, Derry has a tendency to spit. I get excited. If you don't want to be here, you know, it's better if, oh, he does. Oh, okay, I'll go back there. It's a benefit to me for sending someone else. So if you can think about what the needs are and you can deliver a benefit to them, oh, well, thanks. And you get your way. Questions? Mr. Palmer.
I know a lot of times with me being in a high S, I put the things in the sack, but then, you know, nothing that ever triggers it, so I kind of just like let it go.
Ooh,
And like don't really say anything.
Do you think so you can put holes in your gunny sack and they just kind of drain away and they're never an issue? You just,
I just kind of forget about them.
really?
Yeah.
There's another habit, that's attached to
But it's
that.
not a good thing, because then they
No.
continue to do bad stuff and I don't ever do anything about it, you know?
One thing is, you think that it's out of your gunny sack, but it leaves a residue. You tend to hold things against people. No, sometimes you can't even remember, like, oh, what a jerk. Like, why? Back when I was in the 2nd grade, I did this, and okay? It is much better to confront. How do you confront? I'm confused. Take responsibility. Because what happens is, you'll unveil your perspective. It may not be true. Person say, no, oh, listen, sit down, man, I'm just here for 1 session. If you sat here, sit right there, I'll sit over there. No problem. I'm confused. Trust me. Try this tonight. We've got a little conflict, and see what happens. Ms. Pullman.
So what's the happy medium for high Ds? Because I'm the one that would have cussed my roommate, cussed the train, and parked in a motorcycle spot. Like, that would not have been happening.
So is your D above the line?
It's way above the line. Well, no, my I's higher, but my D's pretty far up.
Is it above the line?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what the D's do is, right, they just cuss them out. Now, if the S is there with the D, you don't want to cuss them out because you know if the I and the S are high, and we're going to go over this in some profiles just a second. If the I and S are high, but the D's above the line, it drives the C down. So when that happens, you are, Ms. Pullman, what are your numbers?
So
Nasty. Really those non-words. Here you go. You click today.
okay. D,
Try it.
click myself.
Turn it over. There you got it. Pause.
D is 74, I is 92, S is 54, and C is 7.
Ooh, 7. Now let's talk about, as we look at an individual profile, how to identify the specific tendencies that you tend to see in Ms. Pullman. Highest one versus the lowest one, biggest intensity. Persuade people, high I, to your point of view. When you get passionate, you are passionate. Sometimes you can't shut her up. But she wants to say, you should do this. And you do it with all of your energy, right? Second, D versus C. Get things done, pretty intense, your way. Independence. Next. S over C. So more patient to get things done your way. We call this persistence. I over S. Be relatively impatient to meet people. This is the intensity with which you can meet other people in different places. It's not massive. You don't go into a bar and say, "Hey, how you doing?" That's the high I, low S. But you're comfortable meeting new people. High I, D coming down. This is goodwill. A less intense way of engaging with people. You get all of it? So if we're going to describe her, just from the disc graph, we'd say she is passionate, independent, persistent, engaged with others with a smile on her face. Is that true?
Yes, sir.
It's pretty true. And there is one characteristic attached to the DIS low C. Anytime you have one characteristic below and all the rest up on top, it doubles the influence. If you have one above and the rest of them below, it doubles the influence of the one that's left over. So not only do you want to do things your own way, you're careless with details. Matter of fact, sometimes they don't even matter, like somebody else do it. Get it off my plate. Now when this happens, knowledge is power here. When this happens, do you keep a schedule on your iPhone of all your classes? If I miss a class. Now this is a habit you have in college. You're going to be in the workplace soon. Can this natural characteristic get you in trouble?
Absolutely.
Yep. So what do? You use your intelligence to counterbalance a limitation. So what you need to do is you need to have reminders. Beep, boom, zzzt. Oh yeah, I gotta call mom. Oh yeah, I gotta do this. Or you forget. When the DIS are above the line, I'm going to use a little swear word right here. It's appropriate. Because she has the I and S, the relationship orientation is very strong. She wants to engage with people. The high I wants people to like her. But when she disagrees with people, she does it like this. Right? Yeah. Because she doesn't want to disrupt the relationship. So she gives the sense that she agrees with you when she doesn't. Stop it. We call this the smiling bastard. It's just a generic term when the DIS are above the line and the low C. So the natural characteristic, where did she get this behavior? I don't know. By about the age of 6 it was set. Parents, genetic, we don't know. But it was set by the age of 6. If this characteristic gets in your way, you gotta fix it. It means when you disagree, you have to say, I have a different way of thinking about that. That's an easy way, or I'm confused. Smile on your face. Take responsibility. But you've got to, in business, lying ought to bear the death sentence. Why? Because what we're trying to do is make sure we achieve our mission. We're going to do this. Everybody's got to be on the same page. And if you lie and you take someone the opposite way and they do something that they would not have done had they not relied on your word, then things begin to fall apart. Have you ever been a part of an organization where lying was rampant? Or not telling the truth? How much fun is it?
Not really.
It's horrible.
Brings down everybody.
Exactly. Why do you tell the truth? George Washington had it right. Honesty is the best policy. In business, it just works the best. So you have to develop a habit of always telling the truth, even when it gives you personal pain. Just have to do it. And when should you start getting in the habit of doing that? Probably, yes.
So in the case profile similar to this, if S was low as well, that means that's a person that like to get stuff done their way, but it doesn't matter what their damage is around it.
Not necessarily. This is pace. So this is fast pace, slow pace. You're beginning to put some valuation on that. As a matter of fact, we can put valuation on it once we bring in motivation. Okay? Ms. Poland, can we use you as an example?
Yes.
What is your dominant, what are your numbers on your 6 motivators?
33,
33, okay.
63,
63,
20,
20,
51,
51,
51,
51,
and 34.
and 34. Now we can put some valuation, Mr. Hasanovich. So we know that what drives Ms. Poland is return on investment, the extent to which I can get a return on investment by being a leader in what I'm doing and helping others. Right? So this is how she's motivated. This is how she behaves. So she wants to help others, but she has this big dose of independence. So she wants to do things her own way. But yet, that gets in the way maybe of helping someone else. So her natural quality is to smile and agree. Because that will help others. Is that true? It may be true and it may not. So to the extent that it doesn't, if these two ever disagree, which wins? Motivation. You will change your behavior to meet the requirements of how you're motivated. Questions?
I was wondering if a low C paired with like low traditionalism could be like viewed often as probably like
Yes. Got it. Low traditional, which is, I'm open to new things. Don't have to do it the established way. See shades of gray. Low C, I want to do it my way. Big. And you will see, if you see this person will be acting on his own. They'll dress they want to dress. They'll dress in very non-traditional ways. And if the I is low, they don't give a hoot about whether you care. And they'll flaunt it. Make sense?
What if your D and your C are low, but your I and your S are really high?
Is that you? Let's do you. Numbers.
My D is 28. You have it
Here,
right.
did I hear that? Who's clicking? 30,
My D is 28.
28,
I is 92.
92,
84 and 12.
84,
12.
12.
12. 12. Dominant, and motivators.
38, 50, 49, 58, 26, and 31.
So behavior Dominant behaviors, I and C, same way. Persuade people to your point of view. Passionate, but even more persistent than Miss Poland. This means slower to make decisions. Miss Poland had a D here and an S here. I guess I didn't describe this. The higher the D, the lower the S is what we call sense of urgency. Being impatient to get things done. So she had a slightly positive sense of urgency. Miss Stein has the reverse. She is patient and non-aggressive in getting what she wants. And she engages with people with lots of goodwill. She smiles a lot. Now, the I is high, so she does like to talk to people, but that emotion is quieted down by the S. Remember, the S is no emotion, the I is emotion. So you will, I and S, right here, where you focus your energies is on building strong relationships with others. I'll bet you still have relationships with people you graduated from grade school with. You don't.
Because we moved, so I don't talk to anybody.
We moved. Most S's, once they get a good friend, keep that person for life. They'll invest. Even when that person is tough. My wife has a moderately high S. You couldn't pull her girlfriends away from her for all the tea in China. They can spit on her. I'm being literal, figurative. But they do things that are horrible, and she just understands them. And she understands what a friendship is. She invests more in it. My D is high, my S is low. Out! I'll get another one. It's a very bad characteristic sometimes. Persistence, passion, displayed self-confidence, patience, goodwill. And what's reinforced? High social. Now, it does not mean if you're a high S, you have a high social. There is very little correlation between these. There's some correlation between the D and the individualist. That's about it. What did I promise you this morning? That today I would help you understand others. Have I started? Yes, be more confident by understanding one, yourself. Because if your personality, chances are you get mad because someone else has a different personality or they have different motivators than you do and they are tipping you off. It's not them, it's you. And if you can embrace these, especially when a different flower comes up in the garden, you can say, oh, this is a, oh yeah, this was, no wonder you made me mad. I got all that intensity, I couldn't get any feedback. What it helps you do is have more confidence because you can do it and you can persuade not just people like you. It's like a broken clock, right twice a day. You can persuade anyone. If you can understand yourself, understand them, and adapt your communications, your style to meet them. When you can do that, you can befriend from their perspective anyone. Hope you have a great Labor Day weekend. If you have any questions on this, or you would like